Australia's business channel. This is Mediaweek.
Hello and welcome to Media Week. Ahead, TV over the internet gets another player, plus who won the ratings battle between former Prime Ministers John Howard and Julia Gillard. But first, while digital advertising as a share of total spend is seeing strong growth, the competition for those readers of online news sites is also rising. Following on from the Guardian launch last year, the Daily Mail unveiled its Australian joint venture website late in 2013, followed by BuzzFeed. Now the BBC is reportedly hiring local news journalists to set up an online site here next month, while the Huffington Post founder, Ariana Huffington, recently confirmed plans to launch in Australia in 2015. Well, for an in-depth look at the sector now, we're joined by our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Media Week. James, great to have your company as always.
Hi, Ingrid.
Just how competitive is this space right now?
Yeah, it looks very competitive. You mentioned some of the newcomers. You know, the BBC, I think they're ready to probably announce, maybe as soon as next week, what they're up to here. Everybody knows about the Mail Online story, what a success that has been. Nine Entertainment board in on that. And beavering away is 9news.com.au, which has quietly sort of been building quite a good presence. And if you haven't looked there, it's a really interesting site. They're doing some good work there. So, yeah, look, there's plenty happening and it's very competitive. But, you know, everybody's building big audiences, but whether they can monetise them, the thing with online is they'll think, OK, we'll get the audiences and the money will follow. So will it follow everybody? I'm not sure.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Well, for more on all this, James actually spoke with David Pemsel, Deputy Chief Executive at the Guardian News and Media, and started by asking him why he's been in Sydney.
Over here, my role is a global role, so I'm responsible for Australia, America and the UK. We've been in this market for about 18 months, and I make sure I get over here, every 6 months or so. It's an incredible time for the Guardian at the moment in terms of our growth, and so I've been out here meeting lots of clients, agencies, doing interviews, etc. Because it's the right time for the brand, etc.
Yeah. How's the investment here progressing? Is it sort of, do you have a roadmap and you're sticking to it?
Yeah, we do. I mean, you know, any time anyone goes into a new market, you've got to sit down and do the numbers, make sure you get everything in the right place. And we put a plan together, which was a 3 to 4 year plan, and we are already, I think we're probably about 12, 18 months ahead of where we thought we were going to be, particularly in traffic and in revenue. So yeah, we're really pleased with the progress.
How much detail can you give us on what you're doing? 'Cause you seem quite open at some of the stuff I've seen with you. So what can you tell us about your figures and your targets? And
our ambition to go to any market is because there's an audience, you know, and we 2/3 of our traffic now come outside the UK. And so, but 2 years ago, we were probably getting about 600,000 uniques a month, and that gave us great confidence to think that you know, the stories that we tell and the tone of our journalism was relevant for this market. So we've got a team here. We put one of our best editors here as well, and slowly built it out from there. Latest numbers now, you know, we're knocking on the door of nearly 2 million a month now, and we've managed to do that in 18 months, and that's far and away ahead of where we thought we'd be, and that just gives us great confidence about our role within the ecology of news over here. You know, the revenue has tracked that kind of growth. If you start to get an audience, and anything starting with 2 million means that we've got the attentions of agencies and clients now, which is exactly what we want.
When you read about people, you've got some critics out there in the sort of news space. They like saying things like, "Oh, the Guardian doesn't need to make a profit." Is that a bit of a myth? I mean, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm responsible for revenue, so you know, it's my job to make sure I get up in the morning and deliver as much revenue as possible. And there are two parts of the Guardian. One, we're owned by a trust, which means we have no proprietor or indeed shareholders to answer to. But that doesn't make us not commercial. What it does, it means we can make very long-term bets and strategies about where we believe news will be in 10, 15, 20 years. And I think the challenge at the moment is you've got the legacy businesses who are answerable to shareholders, and they've got to be talking about quarterly profits and quarterly numbers, etc. I'm still accountable for every single metric and dime and dollar across the globe, but it doesn't mean that we're not ruthless about where we need to end up being. And I think digitally, you've just got to play it long. And our ambition is to be one of the biggest in the world. We've gone from the 9th largest newspaper to the 3rd largest English-speaking website in the world, so therefore our strategy is holding true. and we would, you know, our ambition is to turn that into money. So, you know, we're very, very much part of turning that huge audience into cash.
Yeah, and you obviously want to build a sustainable business too.
We do. But I think the Guardian, for 200 years, we're 7 years away from our 200th-year-old birthday. We've always wanted to make sure that we told the stories that need to be told in wherever it is in the world. And that means that, you know, Alan Rushbridge, our editor, is not answerable to a board. He's answerable to the Trust. And the Trust's sole purpose is to protect our journalism in perpetuity, which means that we do tell the stories which would scare potentially others. We do, you know, hold organisations, individuals, governments to account if we think that's right. And that's what anyone should expect from a trusted, independent news organisation. And we've embraced every single digital tool to ensure that we've got the widest reach to create the most amount of influence and impact. And, you know, in any metric, you know, the biggest audience, the most engaged audience, or the most trusted brand always translates into revenue, and that's my job.
Tell us a little bit about that digital open strategy. I find it quite fascinating. And is it the same in all markets? Do you just apply it across the board?
It is the same, and you know, I think open can sound like a really woolly word, but open is very much our operating model. So we believe the combination of what we write and our readers contribute net is probably the purest manifestation of telling a great story. And the days of a newspaper where it would be, you know, you had your public, you had your masthead, and you served your public and told them what to think is well and truly over. And now Alan and his, you know, his great editorial team have embraced every single digital tool to ensure that we create a deep relationship with our readers where participation is at the heart of that. Wide distribution between Facebook and Twitter is an extension of the stories that we tell. And that open strategy means that we want to be sort of the web rather than just on it. And so every time there is a new platform or a new social distribution tool, we see that as an extension of our storytelling, not a threat to our business model, which means that we're always ahead of the game. You know, our first website was in '96. We didn't know the cannibalisation effect it was going to have on print, but we got in there because we knew our audience was going to be there too. When you see 2/3 of your traffic outside the UK, means we'll put an office in America and extend that global and open reach, as we've done in Australia and we will do in other markets. So it is a relentless pace to ensure that, I think the bigger you are, the more influence you have. And that's very much part of what the Guardian is. And so the paywalls is putting a barrier between you and your reader. And that's just not something that's consistent with our strategy right now.
Tell us what's the latest on the print audience in the UK, because you don't need to manage that in other markets, but does that sort of take from what you do digitally, does it weaken your print offering?
I mean, everywhere in the world, you know, print is struggling, and I think that, and that's not surprising given all the great devices that are now available to read that content. It is declining as it is here. But we don't really, you know, in the UK we have found very innovative ways of bundling up our audience on paper, on tablet, on mobile, on a desktop. And actually we've created very sophisticated selling tools that actually sell audiences rather than platforms. So when an agency comes to us and says, you know, we'd like to buy a particular audience, we optimise that across our different platforms, not to the detriment of print, but to make sure that, you know, a brand can get to the right audience at the right time. And so print is very much part of that. It is still, you know, it's public knowledge that it's probably declining at 8-9% year on year, and that's what it's doing in most, you know, mature markets around the globe. And we're not threatened by that. What it means is we just got to keep a pace and make sure that we get into every other space as quickly and as fast as possible.
You're perhaps, do you think, better prepared for a day that comes when there's maybe no more print?
Completely, and we don't sort of sit there and look at when this date might be. I think, you know, the audience will tell us that, and they, you know, they've proved to be the people who embrace these new technologies very quickly. When it comes, but at the moment we see it as part of very much of what we do. And, you know, still Alan Rushbridge will talk about fast and slow stories. And just because everything can be condensed on a mobile device and served to you within seconds doesn't mean that's the stories that should be told. And so he has very much a team that writes very deep analysis, 2,000 words on a particular subject, which is very good for print, and we still believe that's very much part of telling great stories. But equally, you've got to translate that into a bite-sized character that someone wants instantly when they wake up in the morning. And we've got to do both. And I think the challenge is for any news organisation is to deal with those systems and processes that, how do you tell a story globally 24/7 across multiple devices, as well as how do you tell a story in over 3 or 4 pages in print. And it's something that we do very effectively, but we're most certainly ahead of the game digitally, and we enjoy that pace.
You mentioned before you maybe tell some stories that other people won't. Were you referring to like commercial implications, perhaps for advertisers, and have you come up against that yourself?
Look, when I look at the progress that we've made in the States, where we've gone from nothing now to a top 10 site, 26, 27 million uniques each month, the stories such as Edward Snowden and the NSA story has put us on the map there. It has afforded us a huge amount of credibility in that marketplace, as it has done here. Now, there's some edge to those stories, but if you think about really what The Guardian is about, it is about that. It is about making sure that we take on those big stories. And the reason why individuals such as Edward Snowden come to us, or when we do the partnerships with Julian Assange or phone hacking, etc., those things come about because we're so open and because our reach is so extensive and because we've got that deep relationship with our readers. It does mean when we take those stories on, they become global and very impactful very, very quickly. And, there are some brands who says, that might be a bit scary for us, but it's who we are, and so we're not going to compromise on that.
Time for a quick break on Media Week, but coming up next, who made the Women's Weekly list of most powerful women? That's next.